Hey guys, Cecil here once again. I wanted to do a video today and kind of do a bit of an indirect follow-up to my video from last week where I kind of gave my thoughts and impressions on the Nintendo Direct and a lot of the announcements that Nintendo had about their upcoming spring 2018 titles. And now that the dust has kind of settled and we've kind of got a general idea of what's coming, I would say coming out of that Direct, the biggest criticism I've seen of Nintendo and the Switch has been the fact it's kind of become a dumping ground for Wii U ports. And that's not necessarily an invalid criticism. Just for a real quick refresher for those of you who don't know, Bayonetta 1 and 2 is coming in February. That was announced at the VGA Awards back in December. You've also got ports of Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze with Funky Kong added in as a playable character. You also have Hyrule Warriors, the Definitive Edition, which includes all the DLC from the Wii U and 3DS games, as well as the Wii U ports from last year like Pokken Tournament, Mario Kart 8, and technically Zelda Breath of the Wild. Even if it was a launch title for the Switch, Zelda was originally developed as a Wii U title. And I understand where people are coming from. Like with any new console, you want to see new games. I definitely do as well. I may not even pick up some of these ports just because I have the Wii U versions already, and they may not necessarily offer me enough content to double dip, so to say. But I kind of also understand the fact that the Wii U was not a successful console in the grand scheme of things, and a lot of people may not have played some of these Wii U titles. A lot of Switch owners never owned the Wii U, and this is going to be their first exposure to these titles, excuse me. And I think it's also very easy for people to forget that even just 2-3 years ago, right after the PlayStation 4 and the Xbox One launched, the 8th generation was getting a lot of criticism, both the Xbox One and the PlayStation 4, as being kind of 7th gen remaster, dumping and port machines, basically. And I even remember back on the start of the 7th gen, I remember the Xbox 360 being called Xbox 1.5 because it was just getting a lot of, Xbox and PlayStation 2 ports right at launch. So this is by no means a new phenomenon in the industry. And remasters and ports are quick ways for companies to make a quick buck on older titles, as well as kind of expose their franchises to new people, as well as kind of round out their release schedule. So this kind of whole, Wii U to Switch port thing kind of got me thinking, well, if we're going to go down this road of Wii U ports to the Switch, what are some games I myself would like to see? So I kind of came up with the quick little list of 5 Wii U games that I would like to see come to the Switch at some point. For various reasons, either they weren't very popular or they didn't get a lot of exposure, or maybe they needed some improvements that they didn't get in their original form. And I will state for the record right now, Super Smash Bros. Is not on this list. I think it's almost an inevitability that that's going to come. I could very easily see that being one of Nintendo's big E3 announcements, is that eventual Super Smash Bros. U port to the Switch. And it may end up being one of their big fall 2018 titles. So that's why I'm not including it. But heck, maybe 2 or 3 of the games on this list that I'm going to throw out real quick will come to the Switch at some point, and I definitely would like to see that. So kind of kicking things off, let's start with what I think would be a really good game to add to the Switch's library, and that is a port or a sequel to Super Mario Maker. Now this has kind of become a little Big Planet phenomenon for Nintendo, to say the least. Just the amount of user-created content that's come out in the last 2 years for this. It's unlimited Mario, basically. Some really creative levels, some challenging ones that I'll never beat in 1,000 years. While Caster's coming to visit me. Hi, little man. You go back here for a minute. But I do think they definitely could still add some content to this, or maybe add some new power-ups or tools and things like that. Not to say they haven't added a lot to this one, but I think one big omission that they could definitely add to a Super Mario Deluxe, or Super Mario Maker Deluxe, excuse me, or a Super Mario Maker 2 would be the use of Super Mario Bros. 2, Super Mario USA, the NES Mario 2, to the game, just because of that. A lot of those Doki Doki Panic assets have been reused in Mario games like Bob-ombs and stuff, and I just think that could be a whole new world of gameplay opportunity just with how, Mario USA Doki Doki Panic plays, as well as seeing some of the enemies from that game added to, some of the other Mario worlds. So I think that was an opportunity that was missed that could definitely be added to this, as well as the obligatory, all the levels from the previous game being able to be played and downloaded right away on the Switch, kind of like how the Little Big Planet games work. You could very easily build your worlds in portable mode just because of the touchscreen, and then when you've created your world, you could put it in on the dock and then play your new creation on your TV and then upload it to the internet for everyone else to play. So I think that's definitely a very good chance of either a deluxe edition or a sequel coming at some point to the Switch. The next game is Fatal Frame 5. Fatal Frame 5, Maiden of the Black Water. Now, this was a kind of a survival horror puzzle game that we got a couple of years on the Wii U, but it only came out digitally in North America. Europe and Japan got it both digital and physical, but in the US we only got it digital. And I think for that reason, a lot of people missed out on it. Now, just a quick little synopsis for those of you who may not know what Fatal Frame is. This was the 5th game in the series. It's been very popular since the PlayStation 2 era. Basically, it mixes kind of that survival horror style gameplay, but instead of killing zombies and using weapons like in Resident Evil, you use what's called a spirit camera to basically puzzle solve and to attack enemies. You can say, for example, use the camera to take a photo of a locked door, and then a picture will show up on the camera showing you where the key might potentially be. And later in the game, phantoms will show up and you use the camera to attack them because they're, attacking you as however that works. But it's a very, very dark, creepy, a lot of jump scares. And I definitely think it's a game that didn't get enough exposure on the Wii U, and I hope it does eventually come to Switch at some point, just because I think, just for the whole series in general, while the Wii U game was very good, I just think it needs more exposure, and the Switch would be a very good platform for that. My third choice is a trilogy of games, and these technically aren't Wii U titles, but they have a very heavy tie-in to the Wii U, and that is the Mother Trilogy, aka the Earthbound Trilogy. Now, the first game we never got in the US, even though the translation was done. There's a prototype that exists of the Nintendo of America translation that was done in 1990. And it's the version they uploaded to the Wii U is that translated version, as well as the ROM that was floating out on the internet. Earthbound, aka Mother 2, came out, got a big push from Nintendo, had a big spread in Nintendo Power. If you've ever seen the retail package that this game came in, it's a huge box that had a strategy guide and everything, but it was pretty much a commercial flop for Nintendo in North America, and they almost seemed to just after that disavow that the series ever existed outside of Japan. And then the third game came out in, I think it was 2006 in Japan on the Game Boy Advance, and there was a big call for Nintendo to localize that, and it just never happened. So finally the Wii U came along, and Earthbound, after almost 2 decades of silence from Nintendo of America, finally released this on the Wii U's Virtual Console back in 2013. And then a couple of years later, we got Earthbound Beginnings, aka the first Mother, released on the Wii U's Virtual Console. So we finally got both the official Earthbound games that were localized in English, at least in some form, on the Wii U. And then even just a year or so ago, or 2 ago, Mother 3 came to Japan's Virtual Console, even if they never translated it and brought Mother 3 to the Wii U Virtual Console in the US. So Earthbound Mother, at least for North American gamers, and I would say even Europe, because they never got anything Earthbound until Wii U, pretty much. That was their first real exposure to the series outside of, ROMs or importing or things like that. And I think it's just damn time that Nintendo gets Mother 3 translated, throw all 3 games into kind of a compilation, release it on the Switch for $39.99, finally allow gamers to play Mother 3, get the exposure that the series deserves. Even if a Mother 4 never actually winds up happening, at least you'll have an official package from Nintendo with all 3 games translated in English for everyone to enjoy. I think it was last year, Square Enix announced the Seiken Densetsu Trilogy is coming to at least the Switch in Japan. I don't know if it's going to come to the US, but that had the first three Secret of Mana games, including Seiken Densetsu 3, which never came out in the US. We may not see that trilogy come to North America, but that would be another good one. But I just think it's time for, even that or the Earthbound trilogy to finally get the release and love and acknowledgement from Nintendo of America that it deserves. So kind of moving on, this is a bit of a cheat pick. This is actually going to kind of be 2-in-1. And so I guess you could kind of call this list 6 Wii U games I wouldn't mind seeing come to the Switch. And that is Shin Megami Tensei Crossfire Emblem and Xenoblade Chronicles X. Now, Xenoblade Chronicles 2 just came out last month, and I have started, and I've gotten a few hours into it. Really, really phenomenal RPG so far. Definitely gives me the goosebumps that the first Xenoblade Chronicles did. And it seems to have done very well, at least critically. I don't know what the sales figures are for it, but at least critically, it's been a good game for Nintendo, and was one of their last big holiday title releases. And I would like to see, even if Xenoblade Chronicles X wasn't as well liked, it had some criticisms as far as its gameplay, the open world, but just the gameplay with the scales and the huge open world and so much to do, I think it definitely could have some refinements in a port to maybe improve the gameplay a little bit and, just give the series more general exposure. And, with Shin Megami Tensei 5 essentially coming to Switch at some point, this was pretty much buried back in 2016 on the Wii U. It got very little fanfare even when it came out. I was fortunate enough to get the collector's edition of it. And it's that kind of quirky JRPG, Persona Shin Megami title with a little bit of Fire Emblem fare peppered in as far as, character designs and weapons and stuff from the Fire Emblem just added to Shin Megami Tensei. And those would be two really good JRPGs that I think would be great on the Switch. Because let's face it, the Switch has become a very, very strong JRPG machine. Maybe not so much to the level of PlayStation 4, just because that's been out for 4 years. But I Am Setsuna came out last year, got a lot of good pub. Lost Sphere is coming out in a week or two, which is kind of the indirect follow-up to I Am Setsuna. You've got ports of like Ys 8 coming, the World Ends With You remaster. Like I said, Xenoblade Chronicles 2 just came out. Tensei 5 is coming. Project Octopath. There are just so many good JRPGs coming, and those are two really good Wii U RPGs that I think deserve more exposure, and I would definitely like to see ports come to the Switch at some point just to give those series more exposure. And finally, to cap off this lengthy video and list, I guess you could kind of call this the Wii U's elephant in the room game, and that was Star Fox Zero, another kind of 2016 release that got a decent amount of fanfare from Nintendo, but was a bit of a critical and fiscal flop due to the fact of the kind of motion controls the game used that were required to play it. Just the way the targeting, you had to use the tablet to move around. You couldn't necessarily use it. The tablet acted basically as your targeting sensor while you flew through the level on the TV, and that kind of made for some awkward gameplay that, to be fair, to an extent, did deserve some criticism, and it really floored me that they did not even attempt to input a traditional Star Fox 64 style control scheme, because I bet the farm, had that game had it, review scores would have been at least 1, maybe 2 points higher than they wound up being. And I think, as much as I know Shigeru Miyamoto, tends to be very stubborn and not want to change a lot of his formulas in his game creation, I think an enhanced Switch port with those Mario 64 style controls would do the game much, much better service than it got on the Wii U. I think it just for the franchise in general, just because this was the first new Star Fox game in nearly a decade, and it kind of wound up being a flop, just to kind of salvage the series a little bit, I think it would just be a really good idea at some point to come out with a Star Fox Zero DX with traditional Star Fox 64 style controls, just because I think the game would play so much better with them. You know, you can keep the motion controls too. I think you could make that work with the Pro Controller and the gyro or the Joy-Cons. I think you could make it work, but I just think it needs that traditional control scheme to really be considered a solid game. And it's unfortunate that the Wii U version did not get that, because it just kind of, like I said, it flopped. So that's my list, guys. I apologize for the length of this video. Maybe some of you like to listen to me ramble on incessantly about video games. And if you stuck around till the end of the video, as always, I do appreciate you clicking that play button and watching my content. And if you're subscribed, thank you very much. I'm sure a lot of you have seen all the controversy, or at least some of you, about Wii U kind of changing the algorithm to monetize videos. And I'm not going to I'm not going to leave. Even if my channel would become demonetized, I am going to stick around. But back to the topic of the video, let me know what you guys think. Were there any other Wii U games that haven't been announced yet that you would like to see come to the Switch? Or heck, maybe even some GameCube or original Wii titles. Let me know what you guys would like to see on the Switch down in the comments below. And as always, guys, you take it easy, and I'll see you next time.